So, this is Senate Appropriations, it's Thursday, the 11th, and we're continuing our walkthrough of the language in the budget. We're going to, then maybe when Emily Byrne is available, go back and we'll start looking at some of the base issues and sort of putting price tags on different things that people have talked about in terms of funding. So I think we left off at, and all the language relative to forgivable loans and scholarships and stuff, we were relying on Nolan to make sure that it is what a BSAC and APAC have requested. So.
Agreed.
What?
Agreed is also the talk to them as well.
Yeah, so I guess I'm telling you that I'm relying on you to get it right. Because I'm not gonna go through the language and the recommendations that came in the report. So whatever you have is final. Just like we rely on the other joint fiscal for the numbers, we're gonna rely on you for the accuracy of the language. That gets us to page 149, I think 312 in your public health. This is pretty standard language. Senator Westman.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I'm allergic to you.
Oh, sorry.
That's what she did.
Right. So I didn't, this is standard language. I'm sure we would have heard if that's not a problem. This is
I haven't
how we are.
heard anything with anyone.
Looks like a standard language around how we are apportioning this money out to the different organizations.
And I think there's somebody at least on the outside of this table that would have said something to me.
I'm sure that's true. So that gets us through to 25 Shoki grants, general fund, and then this is opioid settlement fund for syringe programs for HIV, and I'm just wondering, we also have syringe in do we have that in a different place, do you think?
Well, right, there was a proposal to put it in the H72, the overdose protection center bill.
Yeah.
But it's the same with little exception as the language around syringes. It's here, and I'd rather not have it in that bill and just leave it right here where it is. So that's
So we're still talking about the same amount of money and the same funding source?
I would not wanting to disagree.
wait, what did you say?
The money.
Oh, the money is
The money on line,
4
on
page 150.
150 on line 16.
Well, that's my question.
We appropriated in the budget adjustment 400,000 in base. We did 200,000 in grants, and then we put another 400,000 to make sure that all 4 sites were open. And what this does is, with the 400 in base and the 1.1, it moves them in funding from in 24 $1 million up to $1.5 million. I've had conversations with the lobbyist for.
They don't want that much money?
I've had
Oh,
conversations with them. What they need is some room for particularly in the Lindenville site, they've had some they have to have 2 people on staff there now because the people
this
coming.
is AIDS, HIV.
Yep.
So,
And that's the syringe program.
and
that's the syringe.
to the following organization, so which one of these, A, B, C, is having a presence in Lindenville then?
They have a site in Linden.
Which one, A or C?
There's
Which of the,
well, not probably
St.
not
John's
John's.
there.
See, the St. Johnsbury site, sorry.
Vermont Cares, St. John.
all right, that's all I'm asking.
St.
for.
Johnsbury.
All right,
They need some help to have a separate staff person.
Well, let me, what is all this leading up to? Tell me in terms of dollars.
700,000.
On top of what's here?
No, 700 instead of the 1.1 and 400 in base. That gets them to
So they've
one,
got 400,
that gets them to 1.1 total. I think, in this piece, to go from a $500,000, up by $500,000 is, in my view, more than they need.
all right, so, obviously, the 400,000 in general fund is 400,000, the same as we had in BAA. So that part's okay.
Yep,
So what you're saying is the 1.1, for syringe is higher than it needs to be
Yep.
by
by
400,000.
400,000.
So, and what, and so the question then becomes, where would the settlement funds be directed? And is that something you've talked to Senator Lyons?
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah.
Yes,
So a settlement fund.
yep.
Yeah.
And that gives more room for other things
So,
to be
Well,
spent.
but I'm gonna defer to Nolan because we're working on the opioid center.
Well, then, I think the easier thing then, until that
We need to
finishes-
solve the funding stream for S98, which is already in
we passed it.
that one. And then there's also funds for the center itself and how it's funded, the pilot program. And then the syringes, so to make sure that we're not oversubscribing in either the opioid settlement fund or the other,
Evidence based.
evidence-based.
So I'm gonna hold this, pending you're coming back and telling me how this would work. Obviously, this is suggesting that there's 400 more from the opioid settlement that could be directed in other ways.
why wouldn't we use that, take that 400 back from the general fund and leave that 1.1 where it is, and it would give us more general fund.
I don't think you want to, because that's base funding and,
Right.
and so,
That
it's,
helps.
I'm gonna just keep that open, because this is still under discussion. I mean, if you want to say general fund versus opioid settlement, I do know that there are certain limitations
That
on
wasn't
the
the
settlement.
suggestion. The suggestion is to make that in opioid funds, 700,000. That creates more room for other things
Right, so.
out of the settlement.
Yeah, okay, all right, so this is open.
And we
Um,
get these.
And we're gonna have to get that kind of wrapped up fairly soon. Just to let people know, in terms of work that's gotta be done, the plan is, we've gotta move this out and vote it up on Tuesday, so, we have Monday. And I don't know whether we need to have the committee meet on Monday. We're just gonna have to see how things look tomorrow.
If you do, then I have to be involved.
I know that, I understand that. And my goal is, hopefully we won't, but a lot depends
We
on
do,
how much gets thrown at us at the last minute. And we've got a couple of committees that are still working on stuff. And we can't be finalizing budget and when we don't have, you know, the thinking.
And they'd have to take the next vote, and that doesn't come till next year.
So, loan repayment for healthcare providers.
So, for the record, Grady Nixon, Joint Fiscal Office, this section is part of the VSAC AHAC bit. So in the Senate version of the bill, it will appear with the other section. All of these are amending chapter 18. This section, for the committee's awareness as well, AHAC does not want the special fund to be repealed. So the Senate version will not get
They don't want, well, their recommendation is they don't want it repealed, but ultimately, but the House repealed it.
Yes, so this was House Healthcare language. The AHEC request is not to put any money into the fund, but rather just keep it in statute.
So that would suggest that we keep 312 would not be necessary, we just keep existing language that exists in,
AHEC requests other amendments to this section statute. So there still would be amendments to.
alright, so I'm gonna hold it, and then, we need to review it, that's something I guess Senator Lyons and Nolan can take a look at. As it relates to the AHEC. Okay, these are programs that have been in place a long, long time. Opioid, we're 312.2 and,
This is language stating that for the future, the opioid advisory committee will vote on its recommendations, and if the recommendations are supported by a majority, they shall present them to be adopted.
how are they making their recommendations now?
In current law, they simply present their staff, their recommendations, so this just adds in that they shall vote on them.
So because
No, that,
you know why.
no, it's not necessarily that, it was what the Commissioner of Health did.
Right.
So-
This is the advisory committee voting the recommendations, so this is internal to the advisory committee. So, I know that there was, that other dispute that managed to hit the press, but, this is, do we prescribe this for other advisory committees? When they make a recommendation, they have to vote?
I'm not sure if there's consistent practice on that. This was House Human Services language added to the bill.
Committee,
I think at this point, how, can I speak for you or?
Okay.
I think for the next couple of sections, they're, they talked about it this morning. I'm not sure that they've got everything down where they need to. I think it should go on hold for, a few minutes.
okay,
But
this isn't a money issue, this is
This is the advisory
prescribing how
committee
they.
and how they work.
Yeah.
So right now, they make recommendations, but I don't think they vote on them. I don't know how they list them or write a letter. I think this is trying to establish a process so that when they do make a recommendation, it is taken seriously.
But I think the problem is that the committee didn't vote on recommendations and the commissioner sent a letter. And there's a conflict between them. And,
All right, I know there's been a conflict, so.
Let me try and sort this out.
If you would sort of, what I'm concerned about is the level of, direction that we seem to want to impose, and we have other advisory committees that make recommendations to the commissioner around spending, and I think maybe there are some, maybe not.
Vote.
And that we don't, in other words, are we putting a protocol in place here that is unique to this, or is it something that we do standardly? In a standard way with all other advisory committees making recommendations to a department head. It's more of the precedent,
Yeah, it is, you're right.
so that's what I'm looking at, and setting the debate around what the commissioner did and why he did it. It's just how prescriptive we are in terms of the way in which advisory committees formulate recommendations. We'll put that on hold. Now, 313.
This section directs 2.205 million appropriation for prevention, substance abuse, misuse prevention strategies across the state.
This is a topic of concern, and this is why the commissioner came in. And it ties back to legislative intent, as he indicated, when we passed, the cannabis bill, the excise tax, 30%, up to $10 million was to go toward, prevention. And, the estimated is, 30%. And they think the excise tax will be 10 million. So 30% is 3 million thereabouts, and that is what is in the base. The governor recommended it for the support of our community coalitions that have been in place for a number of years. So the governor, consistent with legislative intent, recommended $3 million of general fund that's coming from the excise tax to go to support this function. What the other body did was take out base funding and substitute one-time funding in order to free up base money to add more services in another area. What I am recommending is that we adhere to our own recommendation of the 3 million. And well, I'm not saying one way or the other, but we had, the other body took that base funding they removed and to use it to expand and increase support for recovery centers and programs. And I think at this point, we had some discussion about that, but that use of funding or that request that came in from the recovery centers needs to be put on our list for base spending and prioritized against all the other requests. And that we should keep the base funding intact for our community coalitions. And that seems to be what we wanted. And then it got into the whole issue Senator Westman talked about. Maybe we need to put we've tried not to create special funds, but if in fact that's the purpose, perhaps this would avoid the problem of saying, oh, well, let's grab it and do it for something else. So
It is one.
so the concern here is a practice of reducing base in an ongoing obligation, replacing it with one-time money, and then building the base somewhere else without setting it up against all the other competing needs for base spending. So the web report, I believe, moved into recovery. Programs was at $1.5 million in that vicinity. I suggest we have to put that on our priority list and we'll evaluate it. And it has to be funded other than this moving around and creating the very situation that we've been trying to minimize, and that's using one-time money for ongoing insurance. So that was the concern that came in from Commissioner Lee. And I know that we have community coalitions up throughout the state. There's evidence-based, and they were part of that. So
I think this has to go on hold.
I would say that my recommendation is to agree with the governor's 3 million base for this purpose. And that if we want to increase the appropriation for recovery, which was one of the requests that we had from the public hearing, it goes on the list with everything else that is interested in getting an increase. And we know that there are many, many organizations that want an increase.
From our committee.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's about, everybody. So we know what they are. We've talked about them in here. They're the very programs that serve seniors, people with disability, people with mental illness and IDDS. And so, this is just one. And so, I'd like to, if we could agree that that's how we want to approach it.
Oh,
And-
1 point.
And keep the 3 million intact. And then we will put the request for increased support for recovery on the list, the same as all the other providers that came in and requested money.
Sounds like a point.
But
I would say, though, I think it would, although I'm not a huge fan of special funds, I would say that if you did create a special fund, then it's easier to keep track of that 30% that up to 10 million that's already in statute.
You're talking about the excise tax on the, yeah, I think I agree with that, because right now it's getting to be mixed up with everything else.
well, it makes it,
Easier to keep track of.
Well, also, it seems like our legislative memories are short around here.
Yes, it's true.
So perhaps we could, I think that's on our list to, consider the creation of a special fund for that purpose.
Good to go.
For that reason, and that's something that you've talked to Monica about as well, so, maybe that's a way of avoiding having this happen. But the practice of expanding, unless you wanted to say this is a one time. But then you should have used the one time for
I do.
the other recovery side.
I don't think these programs are one-time programs. As much as I wish they were.
Okay. So we're not agreeing, and so what the House did was, take and use 795 to backfill, 1,425,000 to go to recovery residents, which is fairly significant increase relative to all the other provider groups. And then, added another, position of 165,000. So we're just going back to the governor's recommended on that. Okay, let's keep going. And so this language is, I don't know if this language will be necessary then in light of our fact that we want to honor the 30%, the 3 million of that, excise revenue to go to the community coalition.
It'd be
So-
cleaner if you did it that way, I think.
I don't know if we need the language, is what I'm saying.
Take it out.
Right.
I'm thinking, so we need to just check on that, if the language can be deleted, if we in fact go back to the governor's recommend.
The following section, dedicates an amount not to exceed $40,000 to make sure that non-citizen students, have access to the same benefits as citizen students for the summer EBT benefit.
So
I think so.
E 316.1 is mainly statutory cleanup. This came from the administration. This makes sure that the Building Bright Futures Fund is referred to correctly. And the Building Bright Futures Council, statutory mandate is reflected in this section of statute as well.
So this is just cleanup, it's,
Yes,
oh, this is interesting, building bright spaces for building bright futures.
yes, so, this mostly just makes sure the statute reflects the cashier name.
Stupid. Jesus.
I thought you,
So ridiculous.
well,
I mean, how can you keep up with all this crap?
well,
You know, we're one person with one member without a staff, without any help. And supposed to keep up with all this crap. It's getting really disastrous. So stop following me to the men's room.
shall I order supply Valium here for the
I
committee?
think you better. support
Lorazepam,
something here.
maybe that's what.
But I, this is the
This
bright
is just cleaning.
futures,
This is
this
just
this is
cleanup.
the bright futures of the wheat future or
We
something.
created this a long time ago.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm gonna suggest we agree.
Anything with it, the house created it, let's face it. Only them would come up with this idea. Yeah,
Finally, we're at a place we can agree.
I'm sorry, it's been boiling.
yeah.
The following section is related to
Agree.
that statutory cleanup as well,
Yeah.
just to properly refer to the age of children.
Now it's 8,
Yes,
early care, now up to 8.
When you say properly, what do you mean, like as in relation to the act?
as in, or as into, population of children actually served.
In the program.
Yes,
After 8, you have no bright future apparently.
There's no,
You're not,
Right.
success after 6 is gonna kick in. All right, well, I'm gonna close those out in deference to moving things along here. 317. This is kind of unusual where you have a stakeholder involvement with the design of an IT system, but, this is, I suppose it's to make sure that you're not.
This reminds me of the piece we pulled out yesterday where it was mandating basically, there's a lot of language mandating who has to talk to who about
What?
advice. You know, it's never mandatory that they follow it, it's that they have to, you know, according to this language, consult. But I don't think it hurts anything, but I don't see that it's super necessary.
Unless it's the nature of the way data is defined and collected, that might have some kind of a racial bias or something like that, or it's not collecting the necessary data. It's just sort of it doesn't do any harm, I
No,
don't think.
that's what I mean. But you know, what does leverage expertise mean?
I have no idea.
You know?
Maybe we should just get rid of leverage expertise. I mean, we really, that's what their input, it should be, is, based on their own experience, so, I don't know who drafted that language.
Leverage.
So we're gonna just,
Let's just solicit input.
I think that's right, solicit input from, we don't need to
Groups expertise.
find. Inherent in giving input is their expertise.
Post leverage.
All right, so. Duplicative or gratuitous language. Okay, post, adoption, post permanent.
So, for the committee's awareness, Act 78 included roughly $716,000 that was related to a rate increase. Then in the budget adjustment, there was language originally included that would mandate that that rate increase be executed. This language, due to information that that rate increase could not occur, was intended to use the Act 78 funds for other purposes. The Joint Fiscal Office is in communication with AHS about this. I would say that this section, I would probably hold it for now.
I think so. And first of all, it's really hard to have a title adoption, post permanent, and then in the B, we're talking about a youth homeless shelter. It just,
Although the program with the Lund and Easter Seals and others is they're comprehensive statewide, and it's kind of, so follows some of these young families.
no.
Which one are you
The
talking
sub
about?
B,
Oh, you're talking about B. Oh,
B is, I'm saying, I'm not sure this belongs in this heading.
okay.
I'd say, because it relates to a youth homeless shelter, and we did get some feedback in terms of DCF having some flexibility as opposed to prescribing the particular organization that is getting it, but it's quite confused, and so we're trying to get something clarified, and I think based on our discussion yesterday, we thought we needed to get more information before we could finalize it.
the following section is related to the repeal of that budget adjustment language, that was connected to that.
Well,
rate
we'll take
increase.
it as a package.
Yeah.
Which you give us what you think. 318, this is the consensus estimate. And this is something that's done jointly, and I want to just get this on the record, that this is something joint fiscal supports. Obviously, it says joint fiscal office. We want to be very sensitive to the workload. We've been told that you're about as loaded as you can be in terms of assignments. So I just need to have confirmation that this is a very big program. It's something starting up. We're dealing with a new payroll tax. And so I see the reason behind it, but I just want to have on record that this is an assignment that joint fiscal supports and recommends we do.
Yes.
All right.
The following two sections, repeal the,
Well, that was where we got into real difficulty last time. We got some emails about that 1.5%.
so
What does that,
the
Which
first
one, 318?
318.2,
318.1 removes the increase from statute, and the increase cap from statute, and 318.2 adds it back into statute.
we're telling anybody that's regulated, they can only increase 1.5 times the most recent annual increase.
Mhm.
Who else, what other providers do we tell them?
That was in the childcare bill last
Is
year.
it part of the recommendations?
Because we don't want them spending all the money.
Yeah,
Okay,
So it removes that cap for one fiscal year,
all right,
these two sections.
on the non-regulated, but the regulated.
Grady, just out of curiosity, I understand it's existing law that the duplication of that childcare provider shall ensure that its tuition rates are available to the public.
Yes, so that piece of statute is not being removed in 318.1.
Understood, I'm just saying it appears in both sections.
Yes,
And it's necessary in both sections.
Is it,
yes, so
That's the
that
same statute.
it's the same,
section 318.2 amends the same section of statute, but its
So you-
effective date is the beginning of fiscal year 2026. So,
So
what is struck out? Yes, so what is struck out in 318.1 is removed effective on passage, and then what is underlined in 318.2, which is the same language, is added back to statute at the beginning of the next fiscal year
So it's, the cap is removed for FY.
for FY25.
right, and that was recommended by the department as well? Where did this come from?
This was recommended from the House Human Services Committee.
Well, where did they get it from?
I think they probably got it from Jan McLaughlin.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Is this something that the department, I assume, we didn't get anything in the memo, but
No,
that's how I'm just wondering. What, no?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I wasn't there.
I know it, it was. So I'm assuming because they haven't communicated that they've got an issue with it, that it's, okay. Emergency housing, we are not taking up today. First of all, some of what we have in here is attributable to the House budget being out of balance by about $20 million. And, we need to have more time in terms of how we want to approach, what we do, with a program that got created as a response to a pandemic and, the extent to which, new rules or new provisions are created. I know that getting into looking at statewide vacancy rates and so forth gets pretty complicated, it's less than precise. And so I'm going to not even suggest, I'm passing over this section because we need to have more time.
and we have a bill in our committee
That creates a freestanding new program.
it's another bill that we should look at, because John's gonna do this, it'll be interesting.
You find out what you want bill.
So, yeah. So we're gonna hold on this, for obvious reasons, in terms of what we feel is a response that is sustainable. And obviously, this is a big problem when you're, putting in place a program that has an ongoing potentially expenditure that far exceeds the revenues and, assumes revenues will be available in a bill that probably is not gonna pass. So this is holding. 322, this is something that we considered and decided not to act on. And that is that why would you submit a transition plan until you actually have a decision on what you want to transition to? This is a recommended state supplement to the food stamp program. And we opted not to do that when we had the bill. So I think we've already made a decision that this is creating an expectation that at this point, no one is willing to commit to. And I would remind the people in the room that we have made and we're agreeing with some decisions that are going to add some great pressure to the 26 budget. So somehow there's an idea that somehow, well, in 26, world will be better. The world is not going to be better. We know that the supplemental, the plus payment on retirement is going to have to be moved from 12 to 15 million. And this year, the way in which it was done was essentially through a reversion and a reappropriation of existing money. And there are a couple of other areas where we are dealing with that same phenomenon. So the only thing I can say is that like we talked about yesterday, you put in a study and the expectation is that that is an area that in fact you have an interest in funding and have a capacity to fund. So
So
I would say that we've made a decision that we don't want to transition because we plan because we haven't in any way made a decision that that's something that we feel we could do.
this partly goes in my category in the house budget. That if you look at around there, they're studying doing this, but there's no money for the food bank, there's no money for any food shelves in the house budget, so if you can't fund it, you study.
Well, we seem to, there's no money for the reach up program and so the list goes on.
But it's worded as a transition plan, and then the implication is that it would happen. So understanding the cost is one thing. And calling it a plan, does set the tone for what you're suggesting, so it's more than a study. If it were only a study, then I think it would be important to understand. There are some members of my committee, for example, I know there are others who are very interested in having the analysis done. But I agree with you, having implementation be used several times does become problematic. For a study, if we could just understand the
I would-
implications.
I would say, look at the next one, calculate the rateable reduction.
Yes,
If you had $4 million or you had $40 million, look at what we're doing for families. The mother and 2 kids might get $800 a month. So my only point is, the extent to which we are doing a very good job with the commitments we already have in place. And so I know that this is an initiative that's come down. We have many, many good ideas about how we could spend more money. But I hate to create the impression that somehow by having language around studying, we had this discussion yesterday and Senator Burrs weighed in as well. Somehow it creates the impression that in fact there is an intent to act on it. And at this point, knowing what the budget is, to say that this would be the top priority for something new to support relative to all the other things, I think would be premature to do.
Plus, we don't have a health welfare committee with health info.
it's helping.
So this is something with health welfare.
So,
Oh, we can't.
so committee, shall we
Yeah.
keep going consistent with our earlier discussion?
What the heck? We're only one group.
All right, now the next is the recalculation. Actually, we report that every year. And what it would take to pay 100%. There is a report that is out that we get that has not only the reach up rateable reduction, but what would be the amount that's being not withstood for VHCV, the amount that we're underfunding public our transportation sector. It's a report that we get that includes not only the reach up, what it would take to fully fund it, but many other areas of existing commitments that we are failing to fulfill.
I've never seen it.
You get it every year.
I must put it in my reports file.
You probably do, but I look at it because it's something that because it's something that we put in here in this bill, and it was a result of someone who was advocating and said, we come in here and we're advocating for what we want, but we don't see everything else that is out there that you're having to consider or is competing for funding. So
It's a problem.
it's something that, the language, something that Steve Klein and I worked on, and it's been, something in place for maybe 5 years or longer.
Why not?
So they-
I'm just saying you don't need to have a special report. We've already got a structure to get it reported to us every year as one of the programmatic areas of underfunding. So I think it's redundant and unnecessary. I do know there's a report.
Here, I found this week.
That was shorten it up. I think.
What's the report say?
Yeah, I know what it is. It's 27 million. And I've read the report that came out, and that is a separate report. But it's also included on the other consolidated underfunding report.
So you got some highway money, we could use there, I think.
Now, if you look at the other report, it'll show you need a couple $100 million more for your transportation
You
infrastructure.
don't know, don't need to look in
Yeah, 26.6, no,
And he's tapped
by
out.
2030,
By 2030, it's only,
5 million, 2030.
That's if you were to do it right. I'm talking about if you were to fully fund it. So I think we've already have a structure to collect it,
Yeah.
and it puts it in context with all the other things we're
I don't think we
underfunding.
need the report.
So,
But I suspect there are people that don't know we're already getting it. So let's ask for it again.
Well, I just admitted to my guilt,
What?
from the turn.
but I didn't put it in a bill.
We put it in our budget, you voted for it.
I know, but I didn't put it in a bill
Oh,
and
I
send
see.
it out.
Oh, I see.
I just
They want-
admitted my
Oh.
culpability that I wasn't aware of that, but
Oh,
This
I
report
didn't
just.
put it in a bill. I'm not like them.
I see. Let's move right along after that statement.
So the following section is annual language to expedite food assistance to eligible families.
Hey.
All right, 324, we're gonna keep going here, as painful as it is. And this is standard language. Yeah. Oh, 325,
So this is GovRec language with
Oh, this is,
human services tweak, adding Office of Economic Opportunity to this language and a dollar amount change per AHS.
By preserving existing services, increasing services, or increasing resources.
and, is from a money perspective, is this being changed from the government's recommend?
Not additional per house, but a correction from AHS.
Okay. Well, this is. Well, US Department of HUD, so.
Question about 326.
Well,
There.
we're about to go there. You mean for the replacement of home heating?
Yeah,
Well, that's something we've had in there before, right along.
but people are sometimes required to replace their oil
Oh, red tag,
red tags.
Yeah.
And when it happens during the winter, they can't get fuel oil till they replace the thing.
that's a different issue.
It makes it a huge problem.
Because usually the money's.
Is there some place we're doing something about that?
No.
Oh, we should actually,
Sounds like a
we
judicial
should
issue.
actually give a red tag,
In the summer or.
red tag from, March, whatever the time is.
You know, man, I don't know, it depends on how you wanna read this. For a replacement and repair of home heating equipment,
Yeah,
one would think maybe your fuel
That is-
tank is a
yeah.
replacement.
Yeah.
I wonder if that could be, how that might be interpreted.
but it is a problem for somebody to replace it in the wintertime when you need heat.
But often you get if the oil company gets a new customer, they will inspect the tank, and if they look at the tank, it has to be red tagged, they have to red tag it, they don't know that, for their customer in March.
But the problem is, we got the the fox guarding the chicken.
I mean, because they.
Well, they're
buy
the ones that
tank
sell the thing.
And they, yeah,
They wanna
And they
sell
do the
fuel,
work.
they don't.
If you have a company that is your fuel company that also has the service related side, they red tag it and then they get to charge you to change your tank.
That's a sales.
that's kind of like conflict conflict-free case management.
Well,
It's also like, it's.
I'm just suggesting that it is a problem.
Maybe we need to get clarification if in fact,
Yep.
that includes, replacement of red tag. tanks.
At least in the wintertime, people should,
Red tag should.
I mean, unless the stuff is dripping out of the,
May until,
you know, they've been tagging for obvious. It's not
No, they-
necessarily a problem. An immediate problem.
I can get you more information.
Yes, we need
I can
more.
get you more information.
We'll do more.
Are you in charge of that?
did you get that red hat?
Volunteering to be in charge of
Got
the
that
board.
red hat with the red.
All right, I'm gonna keep,
Put the red tag on.
we're gonna
them.
keep going.
We've got the red hat.
Hey, before, how far are you going?
I'm on to three,
Red tag.
26.1, home weatherization. It's on 166. They're increasing the average from
If
8.
you skip over 325.
Yeah,
No,
Here.
no, that was it.
Jumped us, oh.
325.
325 was okay, that's just changes recommended by the department.
Okay.
326 led to our red tag discussion, and now we're on 326.1, and it's updating the amount of weatherization assistance.
So that, I don't like backing up, but that 25 million. So set on 25, 325. That's another housing issue.
Yes, that's there. And I, that's an existing appropriation to OEO.
Yes.
And that's their requested language. I mean, obviously they do quite a bit to, help people, not only with support them getting into housing, but continuation, so, so we did close it out. It's something.
I thought those are the same people that were already.
These are not individuals, they're, per se, it's, funding the community agencies that actually work with the people that experience homeless or to get them housing. So these are the staff that work with, households.
Sometime I think we ought to get a report, from somebody on our total housing, whatever housing it is. Total, because I mean, you get 25 here, 16 and another one, 15 somewhere else and. I mean, then Keisha come up with a couple $100 million they need to, for building housing. We ought to get that all into one place so we can keep a handle.
Well, it's true, we've got different things, one of which is to actually provide financial assistance with the housing for homeless or needy individual households.
So why we can't keep track of it.
Yeah.
Because it's all-
It's
So we have no
all,
organizational structure, and that is in the bill that we have.
So it's the OEO appropriation, that the governors recommend is 36.4 million. And so what this is saying is out of that 36.4 million, that 25 would be used, to really focus on the families that are, in housing service.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it, I just think
That we
getting
need,
out of business, you gotta keep track of your money in that particular section, or it'll get totally out of hand and
well, we can see, I don't know, on one sheet, if we could look at what we're spending. We have done that to some extent, particularly with the ARPA money, how much we had put in, I can't remember how, several. Was it 340 million or something, just for housing creation, nothing. I don't know if that's something we can do. Maybe something we do after we get this budget out, the joint fiscals, if the money is obviously in a variety of places.
that won't be done today.
All right, so I'm gonna keep going here. 326, home weatherization there. Requesting, once again, was this requested by the administration?
So 326 is the 750,000 for repair and replacement. 326.1.
Oh, that's what I'm on.
Yes, that was requested by the administration. It's an inflation adjustment in A1, and the changes in E1 reflect current practice.
Right? So it increases the amount per unit and if it's cost effective, and then, they're required that are not to enter into a stabilization, okay? So that's actually the practice that they're requesting that refunded.
Yes.
Right, now we're in corrections. If you're fine with it,
Well,
oh, well,
we've been doing it for 100 years.
pilot, you like pilot,
I
No.
like pilot,
okay,
I don't like, well. Beyond that, that's something that they could get. I don't think they should get money for hosting where economic drivers for their communities, but they did when that was the agreement made by certain senators who are no longer with us.
oh,
And
Senator
so-
Edgar May, who used to sit right here,
No, Senator Vincent Pollution
oh,
and Senator, Rivers.
oh. Oh, I thought particularly Springfield was,
That was Cheryl.
oh, I thought it was Edgar May,
Well,
who knows, those were the good old days.
those were the good old days.
Senator May would ask you a question and then he would immediately get up and go downstairs to the,
But he may have been guilty of the fact that the parking lot or the driveway replaced any, effort there to place buildings the building that could house, trades and other things that the inmates could learn from. So we have none of that at Springfield. We have an empty cement, a long driveway and an empty cement block.
well, yeah, we could sell it. This, and three, well, this is interesting. It kind of blends in, 345. This is the Green Mountain Care Board, and this is the agreed upon changes in terms of the bill back. And so this is just updating what has been agreed to by all the parties that are bill. And, so this is, I would say we would not second guess this bill back, structure and what has been mutually agreed by the parties that are actually paying, for the cost of regulation. Department of Labor.
So there are two positions that are created in H707 that are not technically new positions. So this language clarifies that those positions in the new Office of Workforce Expansion are existing positions.
I got an email from the union about some labor positions. Am I the only one that got it?
I didn't.
And I haven't had a chance to read it among the several hundred, which people need to realize, email is not a very effective way when we don't get to read email, except, all right, so
Are these two positions, to help with the IT system to get them?
I doubt it. It's workforce expansion and development.
Too bad.
Are we creating a new office? Is that it?
Yes, in H707, but not creating new positions. So it's moving two existing positions into a new office.
Office of Workforce.
In 707.
I have no
Within the
idea
Office of
what must be
Workforce.
built. I don't even think you need to do this through the budget. If you've got existing positions, they don't need to be created. You can reassign them.
But
I
there's a new appropriation for it?
no,
No?
shall be funded through the appropriation. These are existing positions that are currently funded that are being reassigned to this new office. Amy, can you check on that? I don't think we need this language.
Well, what did they do when they created the new space program? They created a new service.
But this is, it seems to me they have administrative authority to reassign positions as long as they've got the money in the budget, unless, and we're not changing. Are we giving a new appropriation for the Office of Workforce Expansion?
No,
Are
No,
they vacant positions?
no, they're existing. They might be vacant, but they're existing.
Yeah, they're existing.
So we don't need to create them, which they would have to, I mean, we would have to do that to create them. I'm just not sure that this is necessary.
They're just moving two positions over the office, or a new office called Workforce Expansion.
Although if you create a new office, next year we'll see
It's gonna be-
other positions that need to begin.
Maybe, but this is just thing where. I don't know, I just not sure that we need to put this in statute. Whether, even though it's session law, that say. Take your existing positions and. If they needed to be funded, which they don't, and if they had to be created, which they don't, then I just don't see that we need to have.
I can talk to you more about it later, or I can tell you.
Do we need it?
I don't think you do.
I think the intent from the House was to just clarify in the bill that these positions were not an additional new cost.
Well, I don't think that
But
we
that
need.
makes a good argument for some.
I think we need, I'm gonna take it out. I think we're,
I'll go with that.
all right, education and finance,
This is annual language, just stating that global commitment funds will be used for appropriate global commitment purposes.
and this we've had in routinely.
Yes,
I don't know what this means, but I think it's a way of getting global commitment to,
Something that positions.
is this an MCO? Because not every child with an IEP is a Dr. Donna's or Medicaid coverage. And and it says these are for quality healthcare for uninsured, underinsured, and Medicaid. So some of the things like. John, I'm wondering, is this an MCO investment?
We lost no.
All right, well, it's far be it for me. Every time you look at something, it raises another question. It's like doing I'm just gonna, we'll close it out. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I'm just wondering, global commitment in this section. E500.
It's really to pay positions
How much
that
money is it?
have to do this work.
Well, it says, appropriated in this section,
E500.
but this section doesn't, E500 doesn't appropriate any.
it should say in section E500,
Either board.
Yeah, B, because that's where your
no
money is.
appropriations being made in E500.
That's education, finance, and illustration, 36 or 41.
And B 500, just plain 500, that's in finance and administration.
That E500
Well, the global commitments there, 260,000.
could be a very costly.
Well, it's appropriated, so, but, okay, so I was gonna say in this section, and this section's E 500, so you've gotta appropriate it in B 500,
Yes,
okay. All right, special ed formula grants. Oh, this does have section B, 502. If you read this, maybe somebody would like to translate it, but I expect it's been there right along. Of the appropriation authorized in section B 502 of this act, and notwithstanding any other provision of law, an amount not to exceed 4,329,559 shall be used by the agency as funding for 16 VSA. If you don't know what 16 VSA is, you're in trouble. Section 2967, in distributing such funds, the secretary shall not be limited by the restrictions. So I'm going to assume that this is standard language. It's,
Well, so, yeah, the governor, when they run it over, the language establishes how much special education funding formula shall be used.
okay. So I guess we will, not waste our time kind of get down into the weeds on that. It's, this is, 503 is something we need to do relative to the Lund Family, Center for Education.
For the committee's awareness, this is annual language, but Lund no longer operates the Independence Place program. It's operated by a different organization, A New Place.
Oh,
Yes,
so we need to amend this then.
To accurately reflect it, it would be A New Place.
The Independence Place program of the, Lund, it's gonna be the Independence Place of the new place.
Program of the A New Place.
Payment place?
A New Place.
Aging.
it's called a.
Who's on first?
Are they the ones that asked,
Right space is new place.
are they the ones that asked for 40,000?
I don't
No.
Started condoms.
That's different.
But
Is it-
That is the one.
final reading, started with,
But A New Place had a request in too for young kids.
I,
By name.
Right.
All right,
I don't
so,
see the question.
so let me ask, does a new place, is the program still called the Independence Place program
yes,
of the new place program?
the Independence Place program is now operated by A New Place, not by Lund.
I understand that. So it now reads the Independent Place program of a new place shall be considered.
Yes,
Capitalize.
Well, that sure looks interesting. So they're keeping the Independence Place program. A new place is keeping the Independence Place program.
the
So we have
Independence
an
Place
Independence
program
Place within the
is
new place.
in a new place, run by a new place.
Okay.
That Independence
But is it
Place.
asking one though?
Who
oh,
knows?
it's in a new place.
It's in the new place.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that.
I thought that was your name of
It is.
It is,
Huh?
Who's all, it's both the place and the name.
yeah.
Who's
And
on
this
first?
is annual language. This section is not in a
I
new
was gonna
place.
say.
The section is the same place. It's always section 503.
Yes,
We know
It's in
it's
the
standard
same
language.
place.
We're just trying to figure out.
If
It's
it's a
not
new
a
place or
It's
an
not a
old
new
place.
place, it's an old place for the new place.
Can
So,
we request an amendment that see what they need to do?
I think we have. It's gonna say the Independence Place program of a new place shall be considered a 24-hour residential program for the purposes of education cost reimbursement. All
The
right,
new place.
yeah, a new place.
Pretty complicated.
What happened to Lund?
Lund, I'm not sure if they no longer have the resources to operate the program. The program several years ago briefly closed and then was reopened by a new place.
They got the COVID, they had the.
All right, so we're gonna close that out as amended.
New place.
All right, so 504, adult
Yeah.
education and literacy.
That was like the line.
Is that counted in the overall education spending? As well as,
It's allocated to the agency.
right, but when we
This is for
report
adult
for
ed.
pupil
Oh.
cost,
No, this is, it was not for people, this is adult educate, this is
yeah, I
the
know,
ABE.
but does it get reported as overall education spending in Vermont?
No, because it's general fund,
It's small.
just like the community of high school Vermont doesn't probably get.
Well, when we get to the teacher's retirement, I think that should be reported on, is when we talk about the average cost of educating a student in Vermont, even though we're paying the teacher's retirement, it should be added into that total.
Um, there's been some discussion about school budgets reflecting the cost, even though it's paid out on the state level, exactly how much the retirement cost for the current
I think-
employees, is
When
reflected there in the cost of that.
property taxpayer says, oh, my, this is this, and this. Maybe they should have a better reflection of what it actually costs to educate the students in the state of Vermont. Which includes and pays teachers' retirement.
Do we have to close
Well,
out?
it is paid out of the ed fund now for normal retirement.
I understand.
But it's not reflected in the local budget, how much of their faculty is
That's
costing
what I'm
the
talking,
fund.
that's
Yeah,
what I'm talking about, but I'm also talking about the retired teachers and their health care and all of that that we're paying under the general fund should be included in the cost of educating the students in the state of Vermont. And we really have a low number, it's a non-officially low number, because we're picking up things in other places, and I don't. So when they talk about, what is it, 60,000 students now? Down from 80,
oh, no,
Or
it's
is
no
it-
more about 80.
it's still about 80. So when they're talking about 80,000 students costing 22,000 average per student, it's really much more than that.
Well, except a big part of that is paying what we should have paid back. So you'd have to factor out how much of it is paying back what we underfunded.
But it seems other things we can't do,
No kidding.
that you're well aware of, and you pointed out. That's why I think it's important to have a mechanism to point out what the real cost is. It's just like with corrections, if you don't put in all of the costs, you get an artificially low number.
Well,
It's 504.
I just,
Let Center Westman, then Center Stark. I want to get back to 504, adult education and literacy.
so the adult education and literacy, so the overall, appropriations to them from the high level is about 6.2. What, the House Appropriations Committee tried to do with the, Education Committee and the House elected is create a 60-40 mix, where, 60% of it comes from the general fund, 40% of it would now come from the ed fund. Apportioning out, if you're, trying to get some equivalent to a high school degree, that the 40% should be in education costs. Is that what this number represents?
So you'll see in the following section that 40% that you're discussing in sub A of E 504.1.
Yep. And that's the 40%. So this reflects that overall, and they took language from that, the pieces from the study that was worked out this year. Because I think that this gets at what we've been trying to do.
Yeah, it does. It reflects
Yes.
right here, 3778-133, which includes the 281, which is the 40%. Goes with the governor's recommend of 3.496 million. So, of the appropriation shall be allocated for adult literacy programs. So.
This is trying to get to
Yeah.
a solution for the overall problem.
Yeah, but the 281 is included here, so it's,
So
that's.
I would
40.
say that this is okay.
I would say so, because it lines up with what's in the web report and the 40%.
So E 504 is the general fund.
Yeah.
Now,
Literacy.
I'm a little
Right.
concerned here. Okay, so flexible pathways, this is the 60% that is coming from the education fund, for this program. This is the 60-40 split. So, 60% is paid for under flexible pathways because some of the students getting these services are, it's in partnership with high schools.
My question is this just for adults?
No. No, actually, I've seen, a young student at the adult program in St. Johnsbury who just was having a very difficult time in the public school and opted to take her courses through that program. So it can be adults, who need to get their GED or certain skill levels, but this part would be for the students that actually use that learning environment.
And is it an increase?
No,
over?
no, it's just apportioning the cost between the general fund population served and the population they serve that is eligible under the education fund. So that's what this does. And that's what, if you look on the web report, we're seeing, the total is, 281 is the 40% and the 60% is the 618 out of the flexible pathways, which is what we're seeing here.
Yeah, why I raise the question is, our children are illiterate. I mean, they can't read, or 40% when they get to the third grade, and if we're dumping money in,
We need to make sure this number is right.
constantly,
That's what's
year
needed.
after
No,
year after year, nothing changes.
It's this,
How are we ever going to improve the education that our children are getting? And somehow, there's gotta be some accountability, for doing these programs that are producing zero. I mean,
Well, I would say in adult basic education, if you're 20
make sure that.
or
Yeah.
any age, and you not got you're graduating from high school, that adult basic education will take. And for most of these
I think it should.
young students, and they're mostly younger people into adults. And they can get you through a program for less than $5,000 to get your high school degree. They do a pretty good job and they're pretty efficient.
I think Senator Starr's point is the amount of money that's costing for remediation because we're not using an effective reading teaching method.
While I understand that, but ADA does a good job.
But once we get to flexible pathways, I just want to get back because what we had is an arbitrary reduction to an entitlement program. And flexible pathways is where we're providing a variety of alternatives to our students. And they took out $1 million to use for community schools. And my only point is, I think we need to be honest that that's what the cost is gonna be. It's an entitlement and to not accurately reflect the the education fund that's gonna be required for flexible pathways should be adjusted for which was what was the governor's recommend, I'm sure coming from the agency. So I'm gonna make sure that I think probably the 2518 is what's in the base plus the 618, but we need to confirm that that's what the number needs to be. And then we've got dual enrollment and virtual high school. And do we have, no, that can be sent where it's actually help the students with their books and expenses so they can attend either early college or dual enrollment.
6. So Richie, did you do your arithmetic for the whole 6.some million?
I think those numbers are right, but I haven't done the math for probably.
Well,
So how did you come up with the 5?
well, I'll tell you at least what we have here in the web report.
It did not.
The total is 4.6, almost 4.7.
Well, I can add pretty good. You got
Well, right here on page,
3.7 and 504.
no, you have to go back and look at your web report, page 47. This is just a language that goes with certain aspects. I think you've got to crosswalk it back to to the web report here. Because this is saying out of that appropriation, this amount is going for this purpose. So you gotta, if you wanna look at the totals, then you gotta go back to the web report, total appropriation. This is just, identifying,
So
I'm sorry.
5.4 and 5.41 adds up to $6,200,000, almost $300,000. And so you're telling me that that's not all being spent for adult education and literacy?
What section are you looking at? 504?
504 and 504.1.
We've got two different things. Flexible Pathways is a program within our standard K through 12 school. Adult education includes students who are outside, who might be 30 years old, for example. So Flexible Pathways is something that we put in an education bill to create greater opportunities to respond and provide education that is more tailored to the student's needs. So Flexible Pathways is just part of K through 12. Adult education is separate from that.
Read line 18 and 19.
The House language includes the ed fund contribution.
Yes, and their total appropriation is
No, I messed up, but both sections say adult education.
They do,
you do.
they do.
So I assume that adult education is for adult education, but it also includes students
Yeah.
that need extra
Yeah,
help.
Yeah.
it does, it does,
Does.
it does, yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question.
And the 6.2 is their whole budget.
All right, so on what section? In
The next one, but for 1.1, I guess it's the same one, but B1, what's the difference between B1 and C? The B1 is enrollment programs,
Doing them.
new enrollment, and then C is they'll be available.
Because one is education fund and one is general fund.
Yes,
Right.
You've got a split there. And that's been agreed upon for a while, but that's another example of what Senator Sears is talking about, where the general fund is helping to pay for the education costs that are not reflected in that. And that split between general fund that was agreed
Because
upon.
half of it, because the money goes to the college, so maybe that's why.
For kids who are,
The dual enrollment, the money goes to the
Right.
university or
kids
college.
who are at Vice High School or other.
Yeah.
Right. But so this, maybe that's why it's, because we don't put the education fund, the money we get to the higher education doesn't come from the education fund.
So it's committee, I realize it's 10 after 3, and I'm gonna suggest we take a little break and then we'll come back and hopefully you can get right through this rest of the language and maybe you can get toward some of the discussion on